Hey, biohackers, welcome back to another episode of the BioHackers podcast. I'm your host, David James Clark IV, here with the human, or is he AI,
Well,
Dr. Alex
let's
Felsis?
keep moving along.
Which one
Thank
are
you.
you? You're not willing to declare. I love that.
I
Well,
have not. So I've not stated my allegiance yet.
yeah. All right. So think about it while we cue the opening song. Okay, welcome back. Have you decided? Are you AI? Are you human? What's it going to be?
I'm human, but I use AI to augment my human nature and intelligence.
Ooh,
Science.
so AI plus HI equals augmented I.
A/I. Love it.
So I don't know if you've been living under a rock, biohackers, but there's this thing called generative AI that has suddenly burst onto the scene. And when I say suddenly, I mean like, wow,
Yeah.
fast. And I think even more than the speed with which the technology took off is the vertical adoption curve. I've never
Yeah.
seen an adoption curve like it. Um, During our conversation with Julie Johnston in just a moment, we're going to talk about a recent survey that said 85% of all students and parents prefer AI to humans when it comes to tutoring. I didn't say instruction. We're not replacing teachers.
Right.
And I just have to go on record. We are pro-human here at the Biohackers podcast. But 85% in 3 months is insane.
Yeah.
And this is a technology that hasn't even been really adopted by education at all.
Yeah.
In fact, it's the opposite. It's been shut down by many schools. So there's lots of reasons, and we'll talk about it, in the podcast. But Alex, generative AI, what the heck?
It's just the coolest. I mean, this is before Chat GPT and developing our Pria agent for mentoring agent for using all these tools, these large language models, things. We're using it in my lab through some amazing computer engineers. I apologize to the computer engineers for saying chemical engineers, and I apologize to the chemical engineers for saying computer. But no, there were people that are doing a lot of AI work and the machine learning work I've worked with for a long time in Melissa Smith's lab at Clemson. They brought in this concept of using like the deep fake technology that existed and applying it to genomic systems. Kind of complicated to explain how it worked out, but it was really powerful for being able to look systems wide at like how normal tissue turns into cancer tissue. So what it basically does is like generate a different gene expression state, and that's what the generative AI was doing. And then super cool, and like I felt like we're just that two snowflakes on top of the iceberg with that. And then all of a sudden, COVID came and we sort of not stalled, but slowed us down a little bit. Some people graduated. Now this large language model is out, and I have the Pria, A/I augmented mentor helping me teach the concepts and distilling information and stuff like that. So anyway, so like from my just like a small research lab in South Carolina, which we're trying to expand out to be a much larger, democratized, open research lab. This generative AI stuff and AI and machine learning in general has just been, really just transformed my research. And it's almost like I didn't think I would ever transform my research this way, and then it's being transformed again and again, like within a couple of years or even months, maybe you could even argue. And so I don't know what's going to happen a year from now with this stuff, but everything feels so right. And, we found some cool stuff, if that's the very least of it, by using these tools.
And I'll tell you, it's interesting talking about the speed of change. When we launched Pria on January 1st, 2023, this year, she had, kind of one AI, you can think of it as lobe in her brain. It was, OpenAI GPT-3 at the time. Since now been upgraded to GPT-4, but now fast forward 4 or 5 months, she has 14 different AI tools at her disposal.
I think it's 16 now.
It's 16 now, and 14 was yesterday.
I know, right?
And so, again, we're seeing an exponential curve in how smart she's getting and how many different tools she can access with one prompt. It's like,
Yeah.
tell me this, and she'll go out and survey all those tools, find the best answers from a couple of them, package that together and deliver it in a natural language, all within 5, 10, 15 seconds.
Yep.
It's mind-boggling, what can be done with this technology. So then, we fast forward to education. So, we're in the
Yes.
education business. We do, democratized skills to help, researchers and students save the planet. And so we had a really, really cool pilot with about 400 students in the spring using Pria in a variety of different subjects.
Yes.
And we have one of the experts, my favorite ed tech innovator, Julie Johnston, joining in just a moment. And we'll be talking about the role that this generative AI plays in the future of education, some of the challenges education, is dealing with. So I'm looking forward to the conversation. How about you?
Me too. And I mean, that pops in my head, like, what is education? Like, it's being redefined potentially, right? Just like search engines, change their ability to use education to learn, find information and resynthesize it is a whole new thing. So I'm so excited. And she's been doing, I'm so excited when there's, people that's worked in higher ed, who are really interested in this, innovative, the disruptive. She's interested in disruptive things. Yes. And that's the way I roll. I like it that way. Positive disruptive. Positive.
That's why we call him Mr. Disruption. That's right. So without any further ado, let's bring Julie onto the show. Welcome back, BioHackers. We're here with today's guest, the first guest of season 2, Julie Johnston. We're so excited to have you on the show today. How you doing, Julie?
I didn't know I was the first guest in season 2. Thanks for having me. I feel honored.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we're honored to have you. We save the best for first. Unlike everybody else, they save the best for last. So, Julie's been a wonderful advocate for Praxis, for the mission, for AI. She's a higher ed guru, been an innovator for many years. We'll just leave it at that. And we're so happy to have her as part of the family. Let's start off with a little bit of an introduction, Julie. Tell the folks what got you into higher education. Tell us some of the cool things you did at IU.
Oh, well, I've been in higher education and actually K-12 education for my entire career. So I've always been an educational technologist. I've always been interested in kind of how can we take innovation and make change for student learning. So, I was started with the one-to-one projects in the K-12. We were the first school to implement iPads to special education students. We started there. So we started
very cool.
A unique field. And, we really saw value there. But moving on to higher ed, a lot of the success I had there was kind of thinking outside the box, creating cool spaces, creating learning spaces that were beyond the basics, interesting active learning spaces. And one of my favorite projects was the design of the Idea Garden, which I believe the topic today could lead well into that because it was about an inspirational space where students can explore innovative technologies, thus the lead in for today's topic.
Yes, the Idea Garden. And were you at Indiana University when you did that?
I was at Indiana University.
Oh, that's very cool.
It was all about generating entrepreneurial spirit, innovations, and in a space that where everyone feels welcome. It wasn't just for the high-tech students, it was for everyone.
Awesome.
Interesting. So yeah, let's explore that. We were just kind of toying around with this new term. Everybody's heard the term Gen Z. I feel like we're in Gen A now, so we're kind of doing the alphabet over again. This generation AI, we're forever going to be known, I think, from today on as the generation that saw the rise of generative AI. which is a very different thing than traditional AI and presents some interesting challenges to higher education. But you're talking to two of the most three of the most optimistic people on the planet about the power of AI, generative AI, in learning. But let's start with some of the challenges. What are you seeing? I know you meet with a lot of higher ed leaders. You're in ed tech. Gen A has been around for 6 months now. What are you seeing as the challenges?
So I would say the first challenge that comes to mind is that it happened overnight almost. It was almost like we woke up and the world was different. And so, we didn't really have time to get ready for what it means. And that, that creates fear
Yep.
when something moves so fast. I mean, we always have seen technology move fast, but this is at the speed of light. And, in higher ed, Alex, you can attest to this. We have to think about it. We have to talk about it. We have to create committees.
Yes.
Yes. And, the challenge is going to be how can we get in front of this so that we are preparing students? There will be new jobs, new careers. There will be new ways of learning, and there will be policies to be had around that. And so I've been reading about, even at the K-12 level, there's an organization called Digital Promise, and they're all about trying to get out in front with resources for teachers, resources for K-12 institutions to generate what is this going to look like? How can we help teachers be successful and become knowledgeable about this?
It's interesting you talk about overnight because we were just looking at this study that came in about the use of generative AI in education, primarily high school and higher ed, traditional undergraduate students. So the population was 16 to 24 years old. And there were about 6,000 respondents, and it was students and parents, because in high school, I think parents have a much bigger role, especially as it applies to ed tech. And I was astounded that even 6 months into the Gen A, 85% of the respondents said they prefer AI tutoring to human tutoring. And so even more so than the sudden overnight appearance of this technology is the insane adoption curve. Have you ever seen an adoption curve like that? It's incredibly vertical.
Never. And what I'm thinking about that is the fact that when we need a tutor, a human tutor, it's usually for a specific subject. And then you have to schedule them. And and I know that when you get caught in a problem, it's usually at 11 o'clock at night when you're studying, if you're a student, or even when you're an adult. And, to have it at your fingertips where the problem is still in your head instead of meeting later to work with a tutor, I think the instantaneous is the important piece to this, and the breadth of knowledge. The breadth of knowledge is just amazing. I know who to go to. I know what Alex's field is, and I know I could ask him any question and he could help me with his field of study, but not all fields of study. So we all have our expertise, but generative AI gives us the ability to really ask any question.
And to ask it in a natural way and to get a natural language response, which I think is the real breakthrough. I mean, this AI has been around for a while. I mean, it was version 3 of, OpenAI's GPT last fall that really caught the world by storm. 1 and 2 were pretty good, but they just didn't have this natural language processing that we have now, which has made such a big difference in making it behave almost human-like. And you bring up a good point. A typical student, 16 to 24, is taking multiple different subjects at the same time. And so they might need help with math and history and English and science all at the same time. And that's 4 tutors. And that might take a week to get scheduled, et cetera. Whereas the other thing that was interesting about this study is that the reaction from the experts as well as the respondents was they felt like the answers were better. The answers were more complete. The AI has gotten better at at providing a good synopsis of the subject or answering the question directly. Now, one of the things that they were challenged with, and we're going to talk about augmented intelligence in a moment, the difference between artificial and augmented, because there is a role for humans. So those of you who are ready to turn off the podcast, we're here to tell you we are pro-human. There's a very important role for humans, and this is going to elevate humans. So I should have led with that. But the AI was the quality of the response from the AI was determined almost 100% by the quality of the prompt. And there's this term that people are throwing around now called prompt engineering. How do you engineer a good prompt? Because the AI isn't agile in its ability to diagnose what it is you're asking, whereas a human can see a question and say, I think what you really mean is, or I think what, and when you're learning, your ability to ask very clear questions is pretty clouded, right? I mean, you're just learning how to ask questions, let alone learn the answers. And so the AI is more of a trial and error to get that final answer, whereas the human will get to it right away. So maybe the answer is, the AI is kind of the first line of defense. You ask the questions. If you get your answer, great. If you don't, then you escalate to a human.
Well, it's similar to just even a basic contact center in the sense that we all get support from a website with a chat that isn't human. And then for the most part, if it can't solve our problem, we elevate it to the human. And so, similar to this scenario, we're going to elevate it to a human. It's just, it gives us options. I like the ability to have it at my fingertips when I need it, but then ask questions to others.
Yes. So, Alex, you had a lot of experience in the spring working with generative AI in your courses. And let's talk for a second about the balance between the AI and yourself answering those questions and how the students reacted to that.
Yeah, that's really surprising. So everything started, I guess Chat GPT was really on 3 was in November of last year, right?
Right.
We started using in January we had Pria up and running in January as a prototype. And so I was deliberately using Pria for teaching. I'm like, ask Pria, and we're using Discord as our platform for her being there, and she was another person on Discord, right, in the chat server. And some of the students actually didn't know that they were surprised when they found out she was AI.
Yeah, that was really, I know they thought that she was a TA, which is
I know, right? Like a really good one.
She worked overtime all the time, right?
Yeah, she was a 24/7 TA.
Yeah. And so the way when I teach, I go and I use the Discord. I use discussion servers a lot because I'll help people out at 11 o'clock. I'm a vampire, and I want everybody to learn. And Priya's even more of a vampire than I am. She's always there. But I started noticing that once the students used the agent a couple of times, then they started using the agent more. And I saw some students becoming not reliant, but using it a lot. Because it was in our Discord servers, I'd see the humans students mixed in with myself as a mentor, and then Priya as a mentor, AI mentor. And I started reading the conversations, and I was looking for where Pria would be wrong. I was looking for where Pria was right. And I found that Pria was, as good or better than me in a lot of cases for answering things more cleanly for what the students were asking. And I saw a little bit of a shift away from, or dependency on me from what they're using the AI. When I'll be teaching again in the fall, and Pria is going to be, this augmented AI is going to be a equal instructor to me. I'm going to present her that way and say, we're instructing this course.
Co-instructor.
Yeah, because what I didn't do is initialize that properly. It was more exploratory in the spring. In the fall, it would be explicit. Hey, we are co-instructors. Use this mentor for answering questions, because she's great. It's amazing what you get out of it. It's so clean. And Julie said, I think the thing that I'm noticing is that, if you're taking lots of classes, you need multiple tutors. Everything I do as a DNA scientist is interdisciplinary. I have to have computer scientists, IT, geneticists, everybody. And so nobody can learn everything. Jack of trades, master of none, right? Jack of all trades. But so Pria is the jack of all trades and the master of everything. Needs some help to interpret things, to make sure it's good. An expert, like I'm an expert in in genomics and biology, so I can check it. But honestly, I would say I would give, and if she was being promoted above me, I'd be like, okay, because she gives better answers than I do.
Yeah.
But what she doesn't do, it's interesting because she's still learning. This AI is still learning how to dive deep into data sets and into science and things like that. And it's still very embryonic with that. But as far as coalescing and distilling information, all this AI is amazing. I keep saying she because our agent, Pria,
So
that we have our
Alex,
implementation.
I have a question for you. So I've been reading Ethan Mollick's work. He's an associate professor from Wharton School of Business, and
Yep.
he has been giving a lot of really good information on LinkedIn about how his assessments and his assignments are transforming. So, for example, he used to just say, write a business plan. I mean, in theory, I'm sure it was more detailed than that. But now he's asking the students to write a business plan that is almost unobtainable. Then he asks generative AI to assess it, tell us 10 things that are wrong with it, what could be better. And then even he's asking them to ask for famous characters to evaluate their work. So if you're Steve Jobs, for example, what would Steve Jobs say about your proposal? So that was a long question way to lead into the question. How has your assessments changed, or have they, with embedding Pria into your work?
So that's interesting because I haven't gotten there yet. So I'm using Pria for more of a discovery research perspective, and using it to generate code. So I teach a lot of Python programming in my courses, and it helps the students get to that point. But I have not used Pria for assessment. I'm excited about doing that. I've got a lot on my plate, but the reason why I am is because I can feel my way through the response from a programming assignment or some, like, hey, what are the genes that cause this disease? Go explore the databases. And it's a very non-linear, hugely complex task. The students go and do it, and I assess it. But I have not used AI to do that assessment part of it because I have to rely on my experience and intuition for it. And this is part of, it's like change management of myself, right? Like I'm totally into AI, generative AI, but like learning how to change the way I do my assessments is still so reliant on, like my personality and my experience that I'm trying to break out of that. So that's a great question. Ask me again in a year and I'll give you an answer.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, but you were willing to embark on it very, almost as a pioneer in the sense that you were willing to let your students have this resource and not worried about it. Were there?
Oh yeah, but think about, like, I don't know. I was a postdoc when Google came online. I remember Google being so much better than Yahoo, like cataloging kind of systems, right, and searching for things. And so I've been using for science and everything else, right? Getting better pizza and going to the movies. Been using Google for everything. But what's happened I noticed about really before the pandemic kind of changed all my understanding of time. But like you'd ask a question, a scientific question, some esoteric thing, and Google's answers would be buried deep. It used to always be at the top, right? And so what I realized when I first started using the generative AI stuff is that the answer was there, and it was better and cleaner than I could produce. So it's kind of a no-brainer to use, like, I could go and Google and not find what I want, or I could use generative AI and get better than I expected.
We have always expected, I think after Google came along, information at our fingertips. But now it's again, at the speed of light, information that we just never thought before. I mean, I've been using Pria, for example, for just research on topics that I'm interested in. And her ability to go out to Google Scholar and go out to other bibliographies, for example, and give me the research articles and summarize them so that I can decide which ones do I want to spend time reading. That's impressive. And think about a grad student and the magnitude of work that they have. If there's some way to sift through and For example, I was using Pria, and she wasn't giving me. I'm actually talking like she's a person, but I think we almost
Yeah, no, that,
this way. But she wasn't giving me recent articles. And, I'm like, no, I want to be relevant. I need the articles to be at least from 2022 or greater. But she was able to do that when, again, David, you talked about the prompts.
yeah.
Yeah.
Learning how to prompt in a way to get the information that you need. But that's a skill set that I think we'll all learn as it just becomes part of how we work and how we learn and how we grow, having this tool available to us.
The quality of the answer being determined by the quality of the prompt. That's right. So there's a few things we did with Priya over the spring. So we had her in a high school, and we do say her. We personified the AI because we wanted it to feel a little bit less threatening, and we wanted there to be a connection there for the student and the faculty. So, so Priya being an anagram for praxis, but also it means beloved in Sanskrit. So it has this kind of nice connotation. We asked Priya to draw a picture of herself, and she drew this kind of beautiful self-portrait. Turns out she's blue. I didn't realize that, but she's pretty sure she's blue. So I'm not going to argue with Priya. So Priya's blue, but the idea was, as we went along and saw how students were using it, we started with GPT-4, but then we realized people wanted more relevant search. And so we opened it up to Google. So we started to add Lobes to her brain, if you think of it that way. And then we added Google Scholar, and then Stable Diffusion for graphics, and then PubMed for, more medical articles, and Wolfram Alpha for math. And now we're up to 14 different, AI tools all feeding the Priya brain. So the student doesn't have to go to ChatGPT and go to, Midjourney and go to, Google Scholar, and she'll do that for them. And what's interesting is we're using this technology called LangChain to build a chain of the language that's in the prompt to help Priya understand which tool to use for which request and how to weave together answers from multiple tools into one cohesive response. So it's interesting how we're using AI to help the AI find what they need and deliver it, in a natural language. We're just learning, but what she ends up being a much more kind of comfortable and realistic experience. So back to the assessment. So there's an interesting story. Like I said, we had 5 or 6 institutions and faculty using it in high school and college around the country, about 400 students. And one of the implementations was an AI course. So it was Foundations of AI, using AI. So we actually won a gold award for using AI to teach AI to high schoolers.
Yeah, it almost looks like a typo when you're.
I know, that's right. Using AI to teach AI.
I had to read it twice when I saw that award.
And the students loved it, clearly. And so, but the instructor was pretty clear about, there's some code and some technical elements to the course, to some of the assessments. If you use Pria to help you write the code, if you use Pria to help you cite, articles, if you use Pria to do anything, that's fine, but you have to cite her. You have to let me know you used Pria and tell me how you used Pria. And I thought that was a really interesting and bold approach. Instead of, shutting it down, adopting the technology, but then maybe elevating the quality threshold of the assignments, expecting more from the students because they have this tool, and asking the students to be transparent about how they're using the tool. One other interesting, a colleague of this faculty who teaches English, I think that's an area that is really being hammered right now, decided that in the fall, his English class and his writing class, instead of just being your traditional writing class, it's going to be called The Future of Writing with AI. And he's going to be teaching the students what writing is going to look like in the future and how to use critical thinking to evaluate what the AI gives you back when you're asking, because everybody at some point, I've asked Priya to write emails, I've asked her to write greeting cards, I've asked her to do just about everything. People are going to ask the AI to help them just defeat the blank page. So being able to evaluate what you get back and edit it as needed, to find fake news or errors in there because the AI does hallucinate. Those types of things I think are going to make for a pretty interesting future of learning. And so that's my next question for you, Julie, is what does the future of learning look like now that we've kind of, opened Pandora's box a little bit?
Well, we're getting a glimpse, right, of what
Yep.
we think the future of learning is. And I love this analogy of the electric bike because when you're riding a bike, you need to be, you need a human to get on the bike and to move the bike, but the electric bike enables a faster and farther to the location and helps you when you get stuck, maybe you're tired, etc. And so a little bit of that analogy of that's the future of learning is that we now have a tool to elevate us, have us get a little bit farther along so that we can reach more critical levels of learning. And that's what I hope anyway for the future.
Great analogy. How about you, Alex? What do you think the next year or two is going to look like?
Oh, who knows, right? But you see the bits and pieces. Well, not bits and pieces. I see giant boulders and the parts of mountains, I think. But it's so hard. The analogy. I wonder, what when we started putting seeds in the ground, we stopped barely getting enough food to survive and started doing agriculture. What that did for civilization, right? Something happened 10,000, 12,000 years ago or whatever, where we really started just taking off as civilizations. This is when we started doing, I don't know if it's scrolls and scribes or if it's Gutenberg's press and really having mass production of writing. What that explosion that had on civilization, I think this is something as big or bigger than writing with that, because we have to adjust to it. It can't just be we rely on what our parents told us, in 1000 BC or whatever. We can go and read about what happened in the past and then take it to a whole new level. And so I think there's a lot of shakiness and uncertainty of what's going to happen as we move up. But once we do accept it, and maybe I'll just be radical, what if we stop saying every single thing has to be cited and say the collective consciousness of human knowledge is what we're citing. You cite the AI, the generative AI agent who's collectively creating a new collective unconscious, but being able to do it. Our little brains can't handle it, but AI can, and mix it all together. And so then there's things that have changed in the past, like citing and plagiarism and stuff like that, which is terrible. But what if because you've gotten to a level where you kind of understand what's happening, or the AI bot can get you to a new level of synthesizing, and then what level do we go up above that? So I just wonder if this is how high this is going to propel us, from my perspective as a scientist, to be able to find the truth, to be able to understand how the natural world is actually functioning, and then use that to do things like knock off disease, capture carbon from the atmosphere. I think we need generative AI right now to deal with these problems we have. And so I'm saying all this, and I'm kind of waffling in my head as I'm saying I don't know what's going to happen, but it sure does feel we need this to be able to deal with massive amounts of information and not having one person make decisions for everybody, because that one person is not that much smarter than anybody else. We need this collective synthesis of knowledge from something that doesn't have an agenda. I don't see agenda from generative AI. I see the only agenda is whatever is baked into collective consciousness and all the human knowledge that's coming out. And there's hallucinations and there's blips and stuff like that, but there's nothing one person trying to control everything, one media conglomerate trying to change everything. It's just here's what the best, as far as humans told me, this is the best I can come up with by synthesizing everything you've ever done. And so when you go to that new baseline, it's a clean baseline. I just don't know how, I just feel like this is a major inflection point in civilization.
Wow. Gen A.
Gen
Okay,
A.
so let me get esoteric for a second then, and bring it back to the subject of education. And thank you for that. That was fascinating. What is the role or the purpose of education, right? And that's a loaded question. I'm going to start with Julie, but you know, uh, so you think through. I think education has really two vectors, right? I mean, I think a lot of people would say education is there to help young people, grow and learn critical thinking and writing skills and synthesize knowledge in a way that will make them, enjoy their life and much greater. And then there's the more kind of practical approach, which is education is there to help skill people for employment, right? And so I know that, in some ways, those people who are concerned about the first role or purpose of education, are concerned that AI is somehow bastardizing the acquisition of knowledge and people aren't thinking for themselves anymore and all that. So I'm going to put that to the side. And let's focus for a moment on the role of education to help skill people for employment. I think you have to start with employment and work backwards, right? How much are the job roles going to change? How much is the everyday work that you do? Because I already see many, many industries being, evolved or transformed by AI, by generative AI. So in order to skill people to use AI in the workforce, it needs to be part of their education. Is that a fair question? Okay. So if the jobs of the future are going to be AI infused, what impact does that have on education?
Well, it's the same as what we've been saying for years, is that the skill set of the workforce was technology infused, and that the students needed to leverage technology in their education. So
Yep.
it's no different in that sense, but the workforce is already leveraging AI to create much more efficiencies. In fact, I can give you a specific example at Avaya. Our Dubai team, who works a lot with the production of video for all of the new emerging tools, they are leveraging AI and able to generate very high quality videos within three days versus a month of
Whoa.
interaction. So you can go to market with the changes a lot faster and and have better quality content because you're up to date. So that's just one little small example, but even in your own workflow. So what I see is that generative AI is just going to be this tutor at your side, whether you're in the workforce or whether you're a student. It's really, there's going to be a blur there between, it's just going to be part of what you do.
Do you all remember? I'm dating myself, but when some of the early Windows came out, they had this little Clippy. It was like a little paper clip that would sit in the bottom corner, and you could ask Clippy answers. Clippy, yeah. So Pria and generative AI, any of these kind of agents are now the new Clippy, but obviously a lot smarter. No offense, Microsoft, but. So the idea is no matter what application you're using, and we've since moved Pria from Discord into the actual learning experience platform for that very reason. You're in Word, you're in the LXP learning, you're using, the Avaya Workspaces agent desktop, and Pria is just there available immediately. And so learning how to engage with her, learning prompt engineering, how to communicate with her, how to use those tools is important. I think having a higher order level of using the humans for for what humans are good at, which, again, we're pro-human here. So we're saying that the AI, at best is going to make us better. And at worst, it's going to replace jobs. And so we can talk a little bit about that as well. I feel like some of that responsibility falls, on education. Is we need to be training's probably not the right word, skilling the next generation for the new AI infused jobs, right? So that, again, people have the opportunity to make a good living and work on things that excite and interest them and grow as human beings. So, I think I'm interested, Alex, in your world, the ultimate and employment end goal for many of your students, they either become doctor, I know they go off to medical school, or researchers. So I know Pria already, or AI, has impacted research in a huge way. How has that found its way back into your classes?
Yeah, I've used before the large language models became really available. We've used generative AI to find differences between like normal and tumor cells and trying to understand what that is. And it's very natural and very powerful stuff. And I still haven't. It takes years sometimes to even digest the power of all of this. But I look at this as, if you look as a package, AI completely, and also focusing on generative AI. Like, I think that with the doctor of today, the researcher of today is going to look like a caveman in a few years, because it's not like they're going to go away. The purpose of going to the medical school and becoming a doctor is to help people not be sick, right? To propagate health. The researcher is to make discoveries. The amount of information that exists now, and I saw this years ago, where I was impossible to keep up with the literature. I would work in agricultural, IT, computer science. I work in lots of different fields, biomedical stuff. I couldn't keep up with anything, and so I kind of just like a little bit threw in the towel a little bit. And my students will go and focus on one narrow area, and they'll do a lot of research and stuff. But like, it's the explosion of all the information is there, and it's like you can't even do it. And Google is breaking down to even find something that would take you, 4 hours to read, like one paper. You can't do any of this stuff. And so I think what all this AI stuff is doing is just going to allow us to go, the brick wall we're matched up against. I keep thinking, like, if you ever walked into a forest and you're like, hey, I'm off the trail, and there's trees and maybe there's some brush and maybe there's some kudzu, and you keep walking, eventually you're like stuck. You're trapped in a dead end because there's so much stuff. This AI kind of is a drone that comes and picks you up and takes you above the trees, right? And takes you to the top of the mountain that you would have not even seen until you happen to come out that way. So I look at this stuff as, like, to put it in specific terms, I think this AI is going to allow us to get the information, the patterns we need, and all this data. The cure for cancer is already sitting there in the databases. Humans we can't seem to link up enough stuff to be able to do it. The AI will do it. And then I think what will happen is we'll see, maybe less people doing much more impactful things, like less people curing cancer, as opposed to having, 1 million people studying cancer. AI plus, a smaller number of people will cure cancer. Then it's like some people might have like lost their traditional jobs, or they had to shift to different fields, but then cancer's gone. I mean, so it's like, what is, that's where I see this going.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It will shift, right? There was with the steam engine, once the diesel engine killed the steam engine, right? And the steam engine, people, they got a new job, or they adapted and moved on. The speed of it, though, is a problem, right? Like, how fast can you adapt as, if you're a web designer, and all of a sudden you can have AI make websites, like, how do you pivot? How do you adjust to a job like that? And I think in education, it's really important to be putting this kids on the right path. That's going to be not a dead end path, but then I don't know. This, like, how do you have liberal education in that kind of a environment? Like, so there's a lot of problems, but I know that I cannot sort through exabytes of data that exists to study cancer, but AI can. I alone one person could cure cancer with AI assistance if they're asking the right prompts, digging in the right way.
So prompt engineering might be, a topic
Critical.
that, that needs to be. I saw Andrew Ng yesterday or the day before on LinkedIn. You were talking, Julie, about the conversations that are happening on LinkedIn, and we're going to be building a faculty interest group on LinkedIn. I'd love for you to talk about that in a moment. But the title of it, and Andrew, kind of one of the original ed tech pioneers, and he's been teaching AI for a long time. I took his MOOC, for AI, I think Foundations of AI, which had 10,000 people in it a few years ago. But the title of it, and I didn't watch it yet, the video was "Let's Get Real About AI Causing Human Extinction." So, so I think, there is a lot of crazy buzz. It's the speed that's really freaking everybody out. But clearly, I think done right, and I do have a lot of faith. I'm a naive optimist. I have a lot of faith in the humankind that we're going to be okay. But there needs to be dialogue. And you mentioned, Julie, that there's policy boards and there's lots of committees being created in education. We're going to do a faculty interest group. Why don't you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so that idea was derived when I was on the Faculty Approachability Project, LinkedIn Live with Chris Moret, and he and I was talking about how AI and generative AI can improve the faculty experience in a way to leverage their time so that they can have time to really build relationships with students. And
Yep.
what came out of that was the need for more conversations with faculty and the need to give them the tool and then have them using it on a daily, weekly basis, and then coming back together for conversations. And so the idea is to build this faculty interest group, give them access to Pria, provide them prompts in the sense of try to use it this week for this, or or what do you want to use it for, and then come back for conversations and perhaps findings. So we're really excited about that and hoping to collaborate with you all. And
we'll put the link in the description for joining the faculty interest group, those of you out there who are interested. But that's a great point, Julie, that faculty are the center of the universe when it comes to education, and getting the faculty to embrace and adopt and understand this tool. I know it's scary. It's coming at us fast. It has infinite potential, and usually, if something has too much potential, it has no potential because you just can't absorb how much potential it has. So, just trying to specifically pinpoint areas where it could help. We've had some success stories, some best practices and use cases, that we can share and others can share. I think it'll be a very good thing. So, I know, Julie, you've been reading a lot of interesting articles. Tell us kind of where you're at in your AI journey. I love these emails you're sending with these cool studies like the one I quoted earlier, which I'll also put in the description. But what else are you hearing?
yeah, so interesting enough, when you say my AI journey, I came onto Avaya last July 1st, really before all of this happened overnight, like we mentioned. And one of the goals was to become an AI expert and of conversational AI, how AI can improve the student experience and the student journey through the time they're freshmen to the time they leave college, et cetera. And so that was my goal really early on. And then generative AI came on. So, it's evolved because I'm so excited about the possibilities, because as I was investigating and talking to a lot of university professionals, they would say, well, I would like to use AI, but it's just not there yet. It doesn't give the students the answers we are looking for. It's not reliable. And then all of a sudden, generative AI came. And so, now my journey is to talk to others. I'm using it. I use it when I need to. So I think that that's a key phrase, when you're caught. I don't use it all the time. I use it when there's that mental block. and in a way to help me with my own work or just something I'm interested in. I mean, basically, this can be the mentor that continues your lifelong learning.
Yep.
That anything that you're interested in, she can be there to help you with.
And one cool use that I've seen it there's a plugin now we're playing around with where you can ask Pria, you want to learn about a specific subject. How many times have you wanted to learn about a specific, maybe even just a task or something you're trying to maintain your washer at home or whatever? And there's a 20-minute video, but really you need like the 2-minute,
Right.
section. But how do you get to that 2-minute section in the video? Google can't watch videos. Find the 2-minute section and bookmark it for you. But AI can. That's now a new capability where you can ask her, okay, go find me a video and give me the time codes for where I should watch. So again, creating much more pinpoint accuracy on what we're looking for and being able to give us what we need when we need it. Bob Mosier, a friend from way back, I've been following his career for a long time in enterprise learning. He coined this term, learning at the moment of need. And I think we're finally there with this technology where, she's available 24/7. And when we need something, we get immediate, feedback at the moment of need. And like you said, continuous learning.
That's amazing. I know that with the evolution of the hybrid environment for learning at all universities, a lot of video was created, but
Yep.
to be able to pinpoint it for the actual topic you need is, over the top. That's just so exciting.
Pria can, in some way, digest the video almost instantaneously and then find what you need. It's, amazing technology. I don't claim to understand the technology. I just continue to be amazed by it. How about you, Alex, on your AI journey? What kind of exciting revelations are you interested in? What are you seeing out there?
Well, yeah, it gets back to I guess so. Let me see what I want to choose. There's so many things. The answer ways to answer that question. One of the is going back to sort of a biohacker perspective of who we are. I think that I like the idea of like removing the gap between research and education. I've always been frustrated. Like, I had to be like, I was like 30 before I had enough power to be able to, do science. You can do that stuff earlier. I mean, I've met so many amazing people in my life. They're just so much smarter than I am. If you gave them tools, they could be curing cancer in the back of the high school classroom with AI, that kind of thing. So I look at like this unbelievable, like it's impossible to even imagine how much data there is just for like cancer alone, right? All the literature, all the measurements, all the stuff for forever, right? For 50 years worth of data. And so the being able to have the educational process take AI, and right now it's doing it from a large language model perspective, like GPT-4, but really also focusing that also on finding the patterns and the numbers, bringing those things together. And, I can see a future where those are brought together, you find a pattern, and then you have the AI go and, tell the 3D printer to, synthesize a drug and sprinkle it on, you go and sprinkle it on some cells. You could do this in your garage with the right equipment. And really just like, we've reached the point, there's the complexity of any biological system. I mean, just think of like, cancer. It's so hard to get rid of it because it's so complex and we can't see it. AI can see it enough where it might be able to help. We might be able to tune it to be able to go and treat cancer on an individual person, personalized medicine perspective, right? So I'm really into like anything we can do to be able to go reduce the gap between research and education using large data sets that we can't handle, our brains aren't going to work for it, and then use that for something good, right? And of course, there's always the ethics and the double-edged sword, right? It can be used for bad too, but like, you got to do both. You got to go head towards the good and try to stop the bad. Because I'm just like, honestly, I'm just so tired of children that are sick. Like, it needs to stop. They haven't had a fair shake.
That's right.
Let's fix those problems, right? And so AI can do it. I think that I just can't even I don't even understand myself how stuck I am as a scientist with the data and being able to keep up with any field. And it forces people to be narrow and narrow in their fields and less interdisciplinary, because then it's just more data. This is a thing that can open up all that interdisciplinary requirement that we have as a species to be able to solve complex problems. So that's a big answer.
Bravo. No, that's awesome.
I think that's where it's going.
I love your answers. No matter what question I ask you, it comes back down to one thing. Let's save the world.
And problems, all the problems are complex. They're not simple. We could pretend like them, but they're not.
They're systems. Yeah. So we've reached the part of the saddest part of the podcast, which is the last question. And I'm going to start with Julie. So this is a question we like to ask everybody. Do you have any closing thoughts? Do you have anything you'd like to share with with all of our friends out there before we call it a day?
Yeah, so I actually do.
Good.
This entire conversation, I saw a quote the other day that really inspired me, and I think it really relates well to what we've talked about. So the future of education is human-led, purpose-driven, and technology augmented. And I just love that. You know, Alex is talking about purpose. We're talking about the technology and how it augments, but we also said we love the humans. So, you know, it just fits well with what I believe. And so that's what I'm going to leave you all with.
That's fantastic. And thank you for saying augmented, because, you know, I alluded to defining augmented intelligence. So artificial intelligence, I think we understand what that is, but augmented intelligence is human. Like you said, it's human led. You're engaged with Pria at any time in your engagement with Pria. You're like, I want to talk to a human. I need a human. I need some help. Then she reaches out instantaneously to a mentor. We have a mentoring network and instructors behind her. She can only handle 70% of the questions. The other 30%, she can handle 0% of the emotional support, that students may need. So, yay humans. Alex, how about you?
I guess so. Julie's that's great. What a cool answer. I'll add one leg to your three-legged stool, and that's data. That the massive data sets that very few people know how to deal with because they're just so huge. Bringing that into the mix and being able to mix that in education, that's where I think the solutions are in the patterns in the data, from climate change to cancer to food security to whatever. It's all there. So I think as we progress and learn how to analyze data, and that's why we're biohackers and we do have computers to crunch through the numbers and stuff like that, right? This is another tool to let us do that.
So the future of learning is it's purpose driven, it's human led, it's technology enabled, and it's data driven. There's as well. So we'll come up with a really cool little quote and put it in the description, but that's fabulous. Thank you, Julie and Alex. And I'll tell you, folks, I think season 2 is off to a banger start, and I'm super excited about today's topic and today's guest. Thank you, Julie Johnston, so much for joining the BioHackers podcast. We can't wait to have you on again soon.
All right. It was an honor.
Thank you.
I enjoyed it.
All right. Cue the closing song.